Hello, this little presentation is going to talk about the issues and the proposed solutions for a sustainable policy on the renewable sector, especially regarding solar. So, just some table of contents, and I have owned a successful renewable energy business in the US with more than 11 years of industry experience. I have also been involved in policy making inside the US, and I consider that I can probably add a few ideas to this whole problem. So, here is the problem statement that was very well identified by the USAID proposal that came out, or report, I would say. Um, so, we have number one, some of the problems is transmission. Then the biggest problem is that we have a very small percentage, somewhere between less than even 10%, that pay 80% of the electricity bills in Pakistan. Um, on the lifeline consumers, there's high subsidies. The cost of energy that the utility is buying is far higher than what they're charging for it to these lifeline consumers. So we can consider this money lost month after month. Um, all the best paying consumers, we can also call the premium consumers, are the ones that have the resources to switch over to renewable energy or solar. Um, in the same way, current net metering policy alienates the utilities altogether. I mean, they get absolutely nothing from uh, from supporting net metering in the local communities. The utilities feel like they're losing all of their best clients to solar. Uh, then there is the big problem of the banks not lending. And the biggest problem is that there is a requirement for a collateral. Now, what if, and that's why, because of this legal issues, that Pakistani legal system doesn't really support a very strong collection capabilities, the banks are reluctant to give loans. Electricity transmission, as we've mentioned, is already there, and there's also pretty hefty subsidies to the industries. So let's look at this whole picture from the top down, right? You have these 80% burden on a very small portion of the consumers. So if you look at the industrial and commercial and three-phase residential, they're basically covering 80% of the burden, whereas the lifeline consumers are highly subsidized. And so the whole balance is tilted, and they're carrying all the burden. Now there is a natural tendency because you are being exploited, I would say, not probably not the right word, but because you're paying so high, such a high cost, and you also have money, you have the highest tendency to move over to solar. So, and that's a problem. Now, we have imported about 1300 megawatts of solar panels in 2017 and 18, right, which is from the customs data. The state bank wants to promote solar and has given special incentives for this purpose. Now, we have two options, right? One is that we don't let people install solar, and the other one is that we let people install solar. Now, if we look at the option that we don't let them install solar, we are not going to be able to take advantage of the low cost of energy that's associated with solar. We have to police people so they don't install solar. And why don't we want them to not install solar? Is because you are losing all your best paying clients over to solar, right? So the utilities, the burden is going to shift even further on the very few that are remaining that don't have solar. And the utilities will be happy as top playing clients stay and pay, right? So that's the option where we don't let people install any further solar. On the other hand, if we let them install solar, they lose the top paying clients, right? And the energy sector already has surplus energy. So what about a third option, right? And that's what we really have to think about is what we can do to make that third option most attractive. We give solar loans, right, to lifeline consumers. So rather than just dishing money out forever. We plug that hole. Okay. So just like in my, network bill, for my internet, I get two portions of the bill. One is the rental payment for my equipment, right? I paid for 3 years, and after that, the equipment is mine. If I had to go out and pay, four, $500 for just that equipment, I would probably not even get this service for their ONT and their fiber optic network. So the idea is that you actually break down, you you let the lifeline consumers install solar, but then you include it as part of your bill as a rental amount to their every month bill. And then they also pay, in addition to that, any extra consumption that they get from the utilities. Now, we take away the subsidies on the electricity that they're getting, right? You don't let them buy cheap electricity. Their subsidy is the low cost of solar that they get. And on top of that, you could also give them a little bit more subsidy on the solar system that they're getting, just to kind of give them a little incentive to move over. And basically, what would that have an effect on the overall industry? Now, the load is moved from the top paying clients or premium clients because they're not subsidizing the lowest paying clients or the lifeline clients any further, which means that the cost of energy for these consumers is going to decrease. Now, when the cost for these consumers decreases, they are going to consume more energy. And at the same side, the industry becomes more competitive at an international level. So the exports can increase and a lot of other things can happen. Now, how do we integrate all the players together into this? The banks give solar loans to consumers, right? But they give them through the utility. So you could give a little bit of subsidy and a big loan, and therefore now the utility is collecting. Now they collect an equipment financing cost as well as residual bill for the client. Um, then this is the very important point. You have to give utilities a little bit of money for every unit or kilowatt hour of energy that's produced on the residence premises. And the reason for that is that they are actually being used as a battery backup. So they have to have some stake in there. You know, you just can't let them go bankrupt. And using this, you know, technique, we don't even need to upgrade the utility transmission line. Well, we do need to upgrade them, but not to the extent where we are putting in IPPs. So these are all the benefits for each of the clients or consumers that there are. For the utilities, they make money from the collections of the loan and every time the system produces energy. Now the banks, they can increase their lending altogether. The banks need that. There's job creation because now you're installing all these smaller systems, so therefore it's going to create activity inside the commercial market. The lifeline consumers, they're going to get free electricity after their loans paid off. So there's nothing better than giving them free electricity rather than charging them every month and losing money on it as well. And then overall, the industry gets access to cheap electricity, which is overall going to benefit the whole industry. What not to do? Well, basically, it's slightly controversial, but my take is that, Einstein said if you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, then there's something wrong. Um, we have a situation in the energy sector. A lot of it has to do with the IPP market, um, and there's a big push towards solar IPP. Well, basically, it's the same problem, only dressed with a different tool. So before it was, a different form of energy is being used. Now you're just using solar, but the problem remains the same, that you are guaranteeing returns, and they love it because everything's all guaranteed. So that's something to really be looked at and see why we would go with a solar IPP model when we still have to upgrade all of the transmission lines and all of the associated problems that go with it, and all the other things. So just a small overview of what I think could be done with this sector. All right, thank you everyone for your time. I appreciate it and always open for suggestions. Thank you.